rock and roll. Good afternoon. This is the continuation of the Board of Standards and Appeals public hearing for March 24th, 2015. The zoning calendar will begin with new cases. Item number 1, 322-13BZ, 4201 Main Street, Queens. 13.
Good afternoon, Jordan Most from Shell Novell on behalf of the applicant. This is a seemingly simple application to reinstate and extend a term for a property that is split by 2 zoning districts and has accessory commercial parking in a residential district. But there are a number of other related and maybe some not so related, but issues relating to the building and the structure that obviously were raised at yesterday's review session. And I can try and respond to a number of them. Some we may need a little more time to respond to. We've also been working, our office has been working on other issues at the Department of Buildings relating to various applications and filings that all have to do with that apparent merger back in the 2000, which was then subsequently revoked. And the nature of that application, I guess I'm sort of jumping into it then. The nature of that application was to create a restaurant space that was going to span lots 1 and 77. There was no transference of floor area. There is no need for that. The amount of floor area that's in the commercial district on the big lot 1, there's more than enough floor area to handle the addition that took place, which is another issue. But there was no floor area transference. It was done with the intent to create this large second floor restaurant space, and when it was realized that that was going to complicate the BSA application, which only affected lot 1, that application was, well, it wound up being, I guess, revoked, but it was not pursued any longer. And separately, and again, I keep having to remind myself, there's an application about parking in the residential district, a completely separate set of circumstances and facts were, or conditions were implemented to satisfy the fire department and the Department of Buildings to create separation and non-simultaneous use between 2 spaces on lot 77 and lot 1 in order to facilitate restaurant space on the whole second floor in a way that didn't require the lot merger. So there's a whole separate and collateral history that I don't think is really before us. It'll obviously be your decision to...
It's the only thing that's before us is whether the zoning lot size changed, right?
Right.
In terms of that question,
correct.
77, right? So you need to, so if the application was revoked, it needs to be withdrawn.
It needs to be withdrawn, and I heard that yesterday, and
Right.
I think when I discussed it with Irving in our office and with the applicant, with the people who were working for the applicant, other people, expediters, architect, I think we'll revisit that and ensure that that application gets withdrawn, so to confirm the separateness of the zoning lots. Let's see. I think one of the biggest hurdles in this application is the parking plan that was approved in 1988. So in 1988 or 1987, the application was revived and the term was extended from 1985 to 1990. And that was the last action by the board on this case. And when you look at that drawing, and I have that drawing here, it is painfully not productive, right? It is, you can see my markings on it. It shows strips of cars with the numbers of cars there, but it makes no reference to how large a parking space would be. It doesn't meet any of the criteria that we would have used today in any application.
Right.
So when we tried to tackle this parking lot and figure out, well, there's 71 cars here, at least that's what happens when you count them up. But when you try and place 71 cars in there with an 8.5 by 18-foot parking space and 24-foot aisles, it's not possible.
You don't get that on that diagonal.
Not even close.
Yeah.
You don't even get close. And the only way we were able to shoehorn in the number of spaces that we did, which is on, so, and there are a number of different plans, and you see that we sort of, we took a plan, this would be sheet Z003. Z003 is a sheet, and it's hard for you, you may have it in front of you, is a sheet that is sort of reminiscent of the layout that was here, but doesn't have any dimensions. And we did this, and we instructed the architect to prepare this drawing to illustrate existing conditions. And if I can talk about this. I mean, if there are questions, I'm happy to field questions. So if this is useful, I can keep doing this. So what this shows is the 71 parking spaces plus 16 spaces, which is the amount of spaces, and now I'll mention the enlargement of the building. So there was two enlargements at the back of the building that increased the floor area of the building from about 24,000 to 28,000 square feet. That 4,000 increment generated about 16 new spaces. So now I've got a site that needs to have 87 spaces that can probably barely handle the 71 spaces. And that's then, what we then came up with was that layout, which showed valet parking, which is my understanding, and I'll also respond to one of the other comments, was I don't know why it says 4 p.m. The valet parking is from 10 to 11.
I don't think you would want it.
Yeah, there's no reason why valet parking would ever end at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, not certainly at this site. So just to clarify that. And there is valet parking presently at the site. So that's how we came up then with this layout, which has a 3-deep valet space. It does have space for vehicles to be maneuvered around, and it has 83 spaces. It shows 87 spaces. It shows 87 spaces. But an oversight, maybe even on my part, was that I eliminate, in my desire to reach 87 spaces, this threshold number, I took away the loading berth. And the loading berth, which was actually not a requirement, was triggered as a requirement by that 4,000-foot addition. I think that tripped the loading berth need. So this is my revised drawing here I hold up in front of you, restores the loading berth to that spot.
And you haven't submitted, that's a new one?
I haven't, no, this is just my mark,
that's your
my magic
little blue
marker.
marks, okay.
But what this does is it also costs 4 spaces. So while this was done to create 87 parking spaces, restoring the loading berth makes it 83. So that's the history, at least in terms of the parking lot, not of the, and I know there were a number of questions about use and the historical use of the property, which I'm fairly confident that the parking has always been there. My understanding is that, and again, also the restaurant, I keep talking about the restaurant as the driving force behind this application, and they are to some extent. Obviously, this is a variance that affects the whole building, but the second floor restaurant has been there, is my understanding, since at least 2000. But we'll pull together if the board requires.
Well, I have a few questions. with
Sure.
that. The valet parking layout where you squish in 63 cars.
Right.
Is in front of the driveway. So how does that actually work? I mean, how do you get out of there? You can be in there, but you can't get out of there if all 63 spaces are.
Maybe 42 and 43 need to move over to where 62 and 63 are.
Something. There needs to be some maneuverability study here. I'm not even sure how you do this. So my car is number 17. I gotta go.
We'll get you out. I mean, I think it happens, it happens in other lots, and my understanding from the architect also, look, I saw that too, and I said, this looks like a complicated layout, and the architect said, we've seen them a lot worse, so I don't know if that necessarily makes me feel better, but I'd be happy to offer or to seek a reduction in the amount of parking on the lot. Only because I think it's not, even as approved, it wasn't really a viable lot. The other thing I also need to mention is that we're also now parking 10 cars on lot 77, right? So that wasn't there before. And
Is there room for more on 77?
I think that's it. I mean, you can see them there on that sheet Z004.
Okay.
That's about it. That's all the room that is there.
And
It's-
they get there through the same?
Yes, it's all basically one big backyard.
Have you done an analysis of the existing uses and all the parking requirements?
I think they all require that 1 per 300. I think if you go back then to this sheet,
Which sheet?
003. 003, we put together as sort of, I have an echo here, we put together as to present this is sort of the parking analysis page, if you will, where you can see the square footage of the building, and then it talks about, in fact, part of the problem is also this enlargement, that if an enlargement results, so section 3621, if an enlargement results in the net increase in floor area, I think the threshold is 15 spaces up to 15 can be waived, and here the square footage triggers 16 spaces.
But the
Yeah.
total building is sort of like
Sorry.
29,000, right?
Right, 29 with the enlargement, correct.
Right, so that's like, what, 90-something spaces? So,
Well, it's the variance plus the 1 per 300 for the enlargement.
No, the variance didn't grant a reduction in parking. It granted parking in the residential portion.
Correct,
Right.
okay, correct.
so don't you have to do, I mean, maybe some of this is, hallway space or something, but don't you have to do some kind of,
And it's possible the parking requirements were different at the time of the variance. I mean, so you need to use those regulations.
Right.
That's the thing that's really unclear. It was like, we have no idea how that number of spaces came about. And of course, the materials don't show it either.
Well, the number of spaces, 71 was the number of spaces that was on the prior approved plan.
Right, but were those
Whether the uses have
required?
changed,
No, but that's the thing. Were those the required number, or were those the desired number? Because you need to provide at least what was required at the time of the work on that site, right? And then the delta is just your additional 4,500 or whatever it is square feet,
I understand.
divided by the 300.
Yeah, I mean, if by I don't think it's gonna work in that direction. I think my best case scenario would be, oh yeah, you're showing way more parking spaces than you actually need. And you can comfortably handle that 4,000 square foot enlargement's 16 spaces, no problem. I have a feeling it's gonna go the other way, and that it's gonna somehow show that, but I understand, we'll do the analysis, and I understand, and I've already got the architect who's gonna prepare me a use breakdown based on office and retail and restaurant use. I think they may all have in this zone, a 1 per 300 generation for parking spaces. And I'll find out also, historically, I don't know what it was based on. I don't think it was based on that, because this variance goes back to 1954.
But there were parking requirements in that.
Yes, but I don't know that they were done that same way. I'll look into that. I'll review again the resolution more closely, but I think it had been just sort of running on that was approved, that was approved, that was approved sort of theory.
But when you change the use to the extent that zoning requires, for instance, there was a
If
change
it-
in use to restaurant, I don't remember whether that's shown on the C of O, but, I have to look. But when there was the 1990 C of O shows stores and eating and drinking at the first floor, so presumably in 1990, it complied with the parking requirements just because you have a C of O.
In spite of the fact that, is that what you just said?
Yeah, don't know.
It's not on the CO, and I don't know, again, of course,
Right.
that appears to be some sort of
Yeah, there's no mention of
administrative.
parking at all, right?
It was on earlier, slightly earlier COs, but it somehow seemed to got dropped on that 1992 CO.
So then, but it said the number of parking spaces on those earlier,
I think, I did not have the number of parking spaces. It said
said parking,
accessory, it made note of, I have them here.
just says accessory parking.
Yeah, it was not as detailed as you'd like it to be.
Okay, so we'll, so at least by 1990, you knew the scope of where the eating and drinking was, before it became an illegal, there was a lot of illegal work done. So before it became illegal, there was a known quantity of parking, and I think eating and drinking has a different parking requirement, or might, than normal retail.
Yeah, I don't know if
I
it's...
don't know if it's-
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
But certainly office has a different requirement than normal retail, which was on the second floor.
Right.
So it's not really just the 4,000 square feet that you added.
It's the change of use
Change of
impact.
use. Right.
So we'll do, we can do, I understand, it's complicated, and we'll look at, we'll do an analysis then of those two things and try and provide a sort of historic analysis of how we got to 1990 and what, if anything, has happened since then. Obviously, the enlargement, any changes of uses that have either driven up the parking requirement, or maybe office space, I doubt it, but maybe office space drove it down. But either
It
way,
originally had offices on the second floor.
right, so in all likelihood, well, I don't know what the difference is from the office space to the eating and drinking, but
I think it's rated capacity, actually. But anyway, okay.
I've also spoken with representatives of the owner and made clear that there are a number of different kind of violations on the property. You noted that yesterday as well. There are violations, there are many old elevator and boiler violations that need to be cleared. I think those are routine and easy to clear, but they need to do it. And then there are some, I believe, ECB violations that relate to specifically to the nature of this application, some of which obviously can't be addressed until there's a grant from the BSA. So I've already instructed them that we've got to demonstrate some progress in that area as well.
There are many violations that are independent of just clearing it up by getting an approval at the BSA, right? There are many that have to do with safety issues you don't have a public assembly permit, therefore we don't know whether you have adequate means of egress, whether you have the proper fire protection.
Right, my understanding is that there are a number of has been, I'm not exactly sure what the status of it is ongoing work right now, and that, my understanding is that there are two completely separate means of egress and fire protection measures within the building on the Lot 1 side and the Lot 77 side. That, again, what was done back in 2000, intended to be done through that merger scenario, has been characterized as sort of convenience openings, and that's how it's been implemented, and that there are supposedly adequate fire protection measures on either side of that firewall.
But the violations say
Uh,
occupancy by 400 people without a proper CO and without a PA. That's not all on lot 77.
Right.
Now that you're not merging the lots, you have to make sure that if you had convenience openings that service both sides of that building, that you still can do that.
And then, well, I think that,
You may have
yes, that's,
You run into problems if you only
Yeah.
have.
I think there are conditions of non-simultaneous use as well, in terms of events on either side of the wall, that they're not to be catered events at the same time, or, so,
I noted that one of the violations was for removal of a closure order sticker.
removal of a,
A violation of the closure order, removing the sticker and occupying the second floor and mezzanine.
Pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like you take the padlock off the door and you say, no problem.
Snip, snip.
Hence our pause about this property. Well, it seems like it's both the landlord's acquiescence and the tenant restaurant's willful violations. So hard to be anxious to grant this until all of these things are cleared up. And to make sure that this public assembly area with 400 people in it is operating safely according to code. And by the way, it's going on for 15 years. So let's just say we're not happy. Okay. So I would say the only violations that are allowed to be left at the end of this is the one that says obtain C of O, right? Every other one has to be cleared up. And then, we were ready, or you want to move on to the next thing, or?
sure.
Are you still working down your?
I'm not sure, I think I've jumped around.
Okay.
I think, it looks like at least to my counting, looks like we've covered quite a few of them.
So there was about the state of the parking area that looked pretty bad.
Okay.
Rusted gates, graffiti, not screened from residential buildings with planting. And then the issue of proof of continuing use can't be an affidavit from the guy who's been there for 4 years.
Right.
Who's not even the landlord, not even related to the landlord.
And then I had a question about your signage analysis, which I didn't know if that was just for the restaurant or if that was for all the businesses, but it didn't show compliance.
And then there was, so in terms of the continuous use, the landlord who's responsible for a lot of these
I think I spoke to
violations.
that. I mean, I said that we'll be able to go back. I think the restaurant has been there since 2000. We'll be able to establish that the parking has been in continuous use since at least since the 1990
Okay.
term,
So some of it
or
is with
earlier.
rent rolls as opposed to just an affidavit, right?
I
So you
understand.
Show that there were tenants, therefore use of the parking lot. Okay. And then, I think Commissioner Hinkson mentioned fair concern. since stuff seems to get built whenever they feel like it and used whenever they feel like it, that all of the areas that were illegally built are covered in the application to DOB. So it's a full legalization of the property.
I guess that raises, I need to confirm it. It was said to me that it was built pursuant to a permit. Although, I guess I
Not
wonder
exactly what you say,
how, well, I'm not sure how, but I also don't know how that is,
how it's possible.
how is that possible if there's a BSA, well, it's a BSA, if there's a special
Yeah.
permit on the property. So,
And there's nothing on the record that shows they received permits. And there's lots of violations that indicate work without a permit and illegal occupancy and all that
Right.
stuff, right? It's not like they filed a Schedule A and then they never closed out. They.
right.
They didn't file anything.
Right? Or there's an open PA application or something like that.
There's no indication that they went to the building department in any capacity, It just sort of showed up. So I have concerns, as you were mentioning, about, egress and whether or not it's, built according to code and all sorts of things.
And the scary part about this is, if it wasn't built pursuant to permits, which it wasn't, and the use was changed without permit, which it was, that may trigger 2014 building code, in which case now you have some serious issues because the staircase is too narrow, the elevator is too small, if there is even an elevator. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Any other issues? Those ought to be enough. Are there any speakers on this item? No. Okay, so there's a ton of work. What's your plan?
What do you think? 6 months?
24th. I mean, I think we need at least 6 to 8 weeks to,
To show us something, but
show
I
you
doubt you're
something.
going to have
yeah, I mean,
anything from DOB by
and
then.
violations, yeah.
You won't.
Well, we can do,
Why don't we say 3
Yes.
months? Is that good? 3 months. Motivation. April, May, June. That puts us in July.
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 That's what you get when you do illegal work and you don't care and you go on for 15 years without a C of O that you were told to get a bunch of times. Okay, so July 14th, Bastille Day, is the hearing in July that's available. So you could submit on the 25th of June. Responses to everything, including, I guess, a copy of your sign-offs on all the violations,
Okay.
or at least progress on all of
The
those
progress,
sign-offs.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that concession.
John's ready to go to the building department.
Right, it's like everything checked on BIS except for that one little thing that says obtain C of O. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Item number 2, 5114 BZ, 1369 East 28th Street, Brooklyn.
You want to put Josh and...
You want to do Jordan? Not Jordan. Jay? Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, okay.
Says to get our children.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Louis Garfinkel. On behalf of the homeowners, Mr. and Mrs. Fry, they're here too. Yesterday at the executive session, I do have the notes. I understand that we're asking for a 20-foot rear yard. As you stated, I did not mention the playground. It was on the map that I had submitted. I could have put that in the facts and findings as well, and I do believe that there is some significance to this enlargement.
Make an argument.
Yes, okay.
Oh.
sort of stands out in the map, but it's fine. Regarding the 4-foot side yard versus the 3-foot side yard, I mean, there is a 16-foot section of the first floor that has a 3-foot side yard. From my
Kind
existing,
of like a bay window.
if you look at my existing drawing, I think it's a little larger than that.
And does that extend all the way to grade?
That is, no.
No, that makes it a bay window, kind of by definition, actually. Bays never,
No.
mostly don't extend to grade.
I mean, it's,
Window seats, yes, not
if
grade.
you look at EX3, you'll see it's, partially into the kitchen, partially into the dining room. Would not call it a bay window.
But it doesn't extend to the floor, does it?
I mean, if,
not in the
I have entire, what?
It's not in the
Not in the
foundation
foundation.
plan.
Right.
I mean, I have entire homes I've seen where there's a cantilever, it doesn't, the side yard is still the side yard, and
So here's the thing. There isn't really a good argument for reducing the whole side yard to the smaller thing, right? Because it's just a little protuberance that's bringing it out to 3. And my running theme now is the tragedy over the weekend, where you're a foot closer to the house next door, and God forbid, and everybody else forbid, there's a fire on either side, leaps right across and engages the neighbor, one way or the other. Wouldn't you rather be that little extra foot away so that you can say, "Whew, saved by a foot"?
well, in light of that, the homeowner who's here will put in sprinklers, based on, they've heard this discussion, and the neighboring house is 15 feet away. And-
It's 15 feet away. when
From
you
the property
measure
line.
From the property line.
So it's really, you're talking here 18, and happens to be, if you look on EX1,
What's the good argument for reducing it to 3 feet? So you could barely get your body into 3 feet,
well,
no?
3 feet's a standard,
There's a guy who's got
Exit
to
door.
work with a ladder. How's he open his ladder in your 3 feet? Can't.
they go to the property next door.
That's called trespassing.
Not the fire department?
Not the fire
Oh,
department.
you're talking maintenance?
The guy who's
Oh.
changing the
Anybody.
shingles.
The guy, the owner.
Oh,
Pulling the
that's
windows
fine.
out. It's trespassing on a daily basis.
That's,
Can't rely on your neighbor to allow you to do stuff. I just don't understand the reasoning for that reduction. When really the house is 4 feet away, not 3. So let's, on to the next. Is this a prefab?
right, so this is going to be a prefab home. They want to go green, we're going to have solar panels,
That's cool.
it's going to be a custom prefab home.
Custom prefab.
Right.
That means it's made in sections, right?
It's made,
In 4x8 sections or something like that?
it's made, they're all made in sections,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise they can't, drive it over the bridge, but as opposed to when, a developer orders 100 homes, and this is going to be a custom model. It has to fit to everyone's guidelines, code, zoning, size.
But there are really unusual conditions. That's why how does that work with this prefab? There are very unusual conditions at the rear. The prefab can make those little adjustments?
They can, the homeowners here, Mr. Fry, he said he would actually like to speak about it. He did a lot of research on it, would you like to come up and,
But aren't you the architect?
I'm the architect, yeah.
Let's speak to the architect.
Okay,
about
no problem.
architecture.
I'm just,
Okay.
well, no, basically, you can have them make any sort of a design that you want. It's just the question is the cost.
Well,
And-
is the width of the house set? In other words, you go to the prefab place and you buy it on a module and you say, okay, I need 3 modules across, let's say. So is your width set and is that wide? Because you're cantilevering over your existing foundation, right? So you're not really using your foundation walls over your new walls, right, to support it. So you've got to bring a beam out or
You're cantilevering.
you're gonna- I guess you're using concrete, so you're gonna at least make a platform so that you have the ability now to have a wider house. And so I guess my question when I looked at, getting back to that 4-foot versus 3-foot thing, it came to my mind, well, it's 3 feet because he probably has a prescribed width of that house if this is a prefab unit. So my question is that the case, and is that why?
No,
Okay.
the case was just, we're trying to
Because
get,
you wanted to make it that.
width is important on all these designs, on these narrower
I tried to get you
properties.
Yeah, she.
I understand, I know,
And you just denied.
I know, but I'm not
walked
going
you
to.
down the path.
You didn't even say no, thank
You
you.
did not take my hand. Okay, it's all right.
And because the other thing is, there are places at the front where it sort of jogs 2 feet, 2 on one side, a little foot for some reason on the other side in the corner of the living room. So that doesn't look very prefab-y either. So that's why I'm curious how this is even, I'm just curious how this is made. Is this delivered in
delivered
like
in
4
sections.
by 8 sections? Or it's delivered in, like, the living room comes on the truck and then the dining room comes on the truck?
They make that decision in the factory,
Oh.
based on the design, based on the sizes.
Do that? Okay. Okay, good. So we can do whatever we want with this house, in other words, is what you're telling us. I guess that's the answer. Okay.
Well, to use the existing narrow yard regulation, don't you need to show that it's separate and individually owned in 1961, which you didn't do?
That's correct. I will have to, I'll provide that.
And could you get into a little bit more about, because it's a 73-622, why this is an enlargement of the existing house? Because normally, as you know, what we see is they're not prefab structures. They're various versions of retaining some portion of the walls. That's not, this isn't even pretending to do that, and I'm not suggesting pretending is a good thing. Just it's not. So how do you make the argument that?
Well, on that note, I would, what Susan brought up, that I cannot have a prefab home if I retain, the right wall of the house. So,
Right.
So we were forced to do that, and, under 73-622, you can enlarge an existing home. The building department, I'm aware that there's a memo of, there's a memo that says if you retain the foundation or you don't alter the foundation system, I've had a determination on that. Currently, the 2014 code just brought up that if you add more than 110% of the FAR, or not FAR, it could be a cellar included, that you have to follow the 2014 code, which we're willing to do. And on the new applications, as of after January 1st, there's an alteration, type 1, I forget the exact wording, in respect, to comply with the new building, with this new section of the new building code. So, I mean, I'm currently at the building department, I got an objection also from them that this should be filed as a new building. So I'm working on getting a determination on that.
So that's a problem, no? Or is it? Sorry? Yep, you can speak.
We'll speak. We can speak.
Yep, we have to look at this.
Yeah.
Because it's tricky.
Yeah.
We're not bound by DOB's determination in this regard, but based on our own analysis, it looks like a new building, so we don't really
Yeah.
care what they say.
And I'm just, again, because I got to quote it this morning, I'm just reading that section from Joe Rose in 1999, and this one was about the demolition of 2 homes to build 1 home. And in that case, it was clearly a demo, right? So that's a different situation. We do have other ones that are like that. But so you need to make an argument somehow based on something. You should look at some of our history, case history, maybe the termite.
But how is that related to this? That was the flood elevation
Yeah, that was
arguments
flood
that we were
elevation. You're
doing.
not in a flood zone.
Now,
So what are you preserving with this?
the foundation, 100% of the, 100% of the
How much
foundation.
floor are you preserving?
Well, the first floor is going to be, the beams are going to be replaced, because it's a prefab home. But not, in terms of
So,
zoning FAR, we're only adding from .6 to 1.0.
But how much is being retained? How much is
Not the increase, what's being preserved, what's being,
At the end of the day, it's a foundation, 4 walls of the
The
foundation.
foundation is how much higher than grade?
2 feet,
2 feet.
whatever, we're leaving that. I mean, it says here, my finished first floor before 6, so it's like 3.6.
3.6?
If you
Typical.
filed this as a reconstruction, you would have to maintain the perimeter walls that you had previously, right? Because you can't have a new non-compliance, right? So then, if you filed that way as a new building, then you would have to come here for whatever you could get based on the parameters of
Doesn't it have to
your
be
previous
existing
building.
prior to?
Exactly.
Yeah,
We've
we've
required
had to
people to
the
demolish,
C of O.
complete the, exactly.
We've had a
Yeah.
case
Commissioner
like
Montez
that.
It's a
has right about-
two-step process,
Right.
but that would be the only, if this is a new building, that would be the only way he could do it.
Unless you can come
We
up
can't
with
find them.
another analysis. We're sort of in this quandary, it's supposed to be an enlargement. And I, you know, the ways that others have handled it, as you know, where they keep like one wall over here and one wall over there, that doesn't work with a prefab.
Which doesn't comply with the memo. I don't want to ruin it for everybody, but, you know, that one little wall on the right side is not 50, it's not your 50%.
Right.
Yeah, you need the 50%.
We don't need to comply with the memo. 'cause
Okay.
It's a DOB thing.
Okay, there you go,
It's just
fine.
that what we,
Okay,
it's what we've seen in practice where, you know, arguably you're
Right.
you're keeping some part of the existing building, some part of the floor area. Here, you're not even trying. And it's, you know, it's kind of a shame because it's actually a nice design, which is unusual for prefab. So, really unusual.
Do you know who the manufacturer is, just as an aside?
I don't have it in,
there's some nice prefab out there.
So you're still pursuing
There are.
the
Well,
zoning
not a lot.
objection from DOB?
I'm pursuing the determination,
The
but,
determination of whether
right.
it's-
And I'm commenting on what you're saying. The 73-622 says an existing building.
Right.
You know, you can go different ways with that. Well, you can say,
It says enlargement of an existing building, and
Exactly.
enlargement is a
Oh.
defined term.
I don't think there's any,
I'll look.
It does. We've had memos.
Okay.
We've gone. through
fine,
this.
fine, but it says it to an existing building. Existing is not defined. And, you know, you could take 5 feet off the back of a building, and then is it an existing building?
Sure.
Absolutely it is.
Well, it's not, it's
That's
missing
like
5
the easy
feet.
version.
It's missing, I'm leaving a full foundation on a building. That's significant. To me, that's
Well,
significant.
it's not nothing.
I'm not saying, I'm not knocking out the back wall, widening it. That's why part of why I was cantilevering also. Comply, you
So
know.
here's the thing, we need help getting to this idea of enlargement, and everybody's trying to figure out like something, but really that's
Okay.
ultimately your job. So we need help getting this to fit within the concept of the 73-622, and I'd suggest that you go and look at other cases, other decisions, maybe go back far in its history, to see if you can inform yourself about other examples where something like this, doesn't matter whether it's prefab on top, but where just retaining the foundations was adequate.
I know a DOB determination that I had a case with myself that,
But don't forget, it's BSA,
yeah,
right?
They're determining whether or not you have to file an NB versus an Alt1.
right.
They're not determining whether you're an existing building when they make that.
That's
I
correct.
know what you're talking about, but
Yeah.
that's not the same thing. That's apples and oranges. I mean, maybe it shouldn't be, but it is.
That's correct. I agree with you. And that's my point, is that, you know, if I leave a full foundation, why, you know, if the DOB doesn't agree, you know, that's like apples and oranges. But here you could agree if you want to.
Right, we could
Make the
agree
argument.
if you persuade us, if you help us get there.
Okay,
But at the moment, you're trying us to get you there, and, you know, we're trying to do this on the fly, and we can't. So, not that we're not willing, but
no, I
we
just,
just can't figure
till
it out.
today,
on the
I wanted to have this, you know, discussion, so,
fly. Okay.
okay.
Okay, so, what else was, that's a pretty critical one, that's like threshold. And then, Just as there was a notation on your drawings about using 23631B.
Yeah, that's
That's
the
not
typo, yeah.
applying, right?
Right.
And, but you do have I think you do show that it complies with the street wall, the side yard setback
Yes.
requirement of 30 feet,
Yes.
even where there's the solar panel side, the opposite from the solar panel? Because then.
It's actually permitted obstruction up to 18 inches, I believe, but I'm still okay with that anyway, yeah.
You are, so it never
Yeah.
gets higher than 30 feet. You're 34 feet, so you're
Look at the-
34 feet to your peak. What are you to that bottom eave?
Look at A10,
A10.
A10.
A10, 30 feet?
30 feet.
Oh, you're just at 30 feet there, okay. And then you're following at least 1 to 1, 1 to 2 to 1. Okay. Or are you, yeah. Okay.
Okay, and I'll give you an isometric, I know you asked for that. Planting, I'll give you the survey.
Okay. So then the next thing is about the compatibility with the neighbors. So it seems to be somewhat taller than the neighbors. So that, and also with respect to the rear yard, unless you give a good explanation of why you don't need to think about the immediate neighbor's rear yard. Because there is a mechanical room that has a 10-foot ceiling height. In the interest of you getting your array all on one level, wondering whether you could drop over the mechanical room, the array to a level below, so it reduces the apparent height of the building at the rear.
Drop in the rear portion.
Yeah.
Okay. Look at that.
And another thing that just makes it helpful for us to understand is if you could do an axonometric or a photo insertion into the streetscape, sometimes that's enough to show that your height is fine. And actually, on a recent submission, we had something very helpful where the architect must have gone out with a laser or something to measure the grade to roof heights of houses on the block. And that established for him that his was one of many houses on the block that was the same height. And that is something that it's hard to do with photos, so we're kind of relying on the photos and squinting and trying to imagine the new house in there, and will it be taller then? Because we don't really know the heights, right?
Okay, try.
Okay.
Yep.
Lasers are fun. And what else? I think that covers it. Anybody else? Any speakers on this item? I know the owners are here, but you don't want to speak. Okay, so
We'll just speak about the solar, but, the
I think
prefab.
the
yeah.
solar's
Yeah.
great, it's very cool.
We get it.
Okay,
Give me
so,
give me like a month,
come on.
yeah.
So I'm not allowed to put anything else on the 28th.
I think we're full.
So it means April's totally full now. So we need to move to May 12th for the next hearing, which would give you that month to submit those.
2 weeks before, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
28. So the submission on the 23rd of April, which is a Thursday.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank
All right,
you.
take care.
Item number 3, 24214BZ, 212 East 57th Street, Manhattan. Jay Goldstein.
Good afternoon, Jay Goldstein for the applicant. Attended yesterday's review session. Just a matter of introduction, this gym it's not a typical gym, it's more of a personal training type of facility. Therefore, noise and loud groups of people and loud classes are not a concern, as big of a concern as you'd have with a normal gym for classes. Generally speaking, you'll have a one-on-one session, or at max, I believe it's 3 on 1 session for the personal training, and then they do have some yoga. With regards to the questions raised yesterday, I know the chair had mentioned that she saw on the website that there were massages, and then I noted there were no massages yet. I called up the gym unannounced, spoke to the receptionist last night. She said there are no massages yet and that they're working on their permits. I guess that's what I'm doing. And I called up this morning again to see if someone had a different answer, and I got the same response.
That was resourceful.
So,
Okay.
huh?
That was resourceful, okay.
I don't want to get caught, So,
Entrapment.
all massages, though, will be done pursuant, or through licensed massage therapists, as is generally noted in the resolution. I imagine we'll have the same condition in our resolution. With regard to the detailing of the sound noise attenuation, I'll shade it, I'll have the architect mark the location of the different types of sound attenuation measures for those side walls, the interior wall, and the
And the
roof.
ceiling, there's
And
no
the ceiling,
information on the
right.
ceiling.
I'll have him mark and note on the plans all of that. With regard to the location of the weights and things of that nature, I'll have it marked on the plans as well. Within the gym itself, there are, I believe, 6 treadmills, 2 stair climbers, and then a rack of bars that are fixed into, weight bars that are fixed into the machinery. So there's no concern of dropping weights, there's no concern of, you know, vibrations of the adjacent walls or to the neighbors. In terms of the sprinklers and fire alarm, this is a new building, so the sprinklers and fire alarms were all filed and signed off pursuant to the NB application. The interior change was done after the fact. This used to be an art gallery, so the sprinkler and fire alarm were signed off pursuant to that. I'll get some sort of confirmation that it's in and that it's there, and I'll mark on the notes that it's in and will be maintained, and I'll change the language of the notes on the plans as well.
Excellent.
I believe the final comment was with regard to the ADA compliance. As Commissioner Montanez noted, generally speaking, historically, DOB's accepted the ground floor having handicapped accessibility if it provides similar services and similar, you know, similar conditions as the remaining uses. So the cellar has a massage and open floor area for working out. The ground floor has one massage room, has an open area for working out, and has a handicap accessible bathroom. So we do meet it in that respect. Additionally, if the need arises, there is an elevator with access to our cellar space through the residential. I know that DOB doesn't allow that, but that's been, if the need arises to access it for whatever reason, there is access through that. But the
But,
handicap accessibility is met through the ground floor and through the measures taken on the ground floor.
So when these plans were filed, right?
Right.
So when the plans were filed, was there an objection about the ADA?
The objection, I don't think, came out yet. Generally, they'll file, get the objection for BSA, and when we come back, they'll do the plan review.
Oh, I see. So the plans were never filed?
The plans were filed.
Only, I
It
mean, they
wasn't-
were filed for the purpose of this application, but they never filed plans?
Right, but I mean, the approval for the ADA is this, my architect noted historically, it's been done, and I know that I've had other PCs where they have accepted this measure for the ADA compliance, so I have no reason to assume, but as council mentioned, as part of the resolution, it's generally a notation that ADA compliance will be
Right,
adhered to.
okay.
I believe that was all the questions.
Okay, one can only hope. Otherwise, I'm not sure how we deal with that, unless there's a way to get a DOB determination on the ADA.
We make it pretty clear in the reso that they're supposed to verify that. And it's on the plans as well, I think. DOB
Yeah.
to verify accessibility.
Yeah, okay. It's just that we do that so often and then they do nothing, right? So I'm so used to seeing nothing done,
Right.
already I'm used to it.
I believe with most of my PCs, they've actually gone for their C of O. I don't know if that's...
Maybe you could have a training program for others.
That would keep me out of business. I'm trying to keep in business.
No, it would be a different business.
No, it wouldn't. This is what I know.
Okay.
So.
All right, so I think the submissions are fairly minor, especially since if you, the sooner you submit, the less likely there'll be a massage therapist employed right now. So
Well, I actually
it's
told
like
them when we
being a clown.
started that if you have one, give me the license, and if you don't have one, don't get one, so.
Yeah. Okay.
But I can have this to you within a week, so I imagine
Okay.
the hearing schedule gets kind of complex with Passover.
Yes, good. So if you could submit, how soon can you submit this stuff?
My architect said by Friday,
By Friday, April 3rd? When's Passover start?
April 3rd at night. So I can do it April 3rd, and then
Okay.
a hearing, I guess, the
The
14th if
14th,
available.
does that work? Or
Perfect.
it's good, because it'll be decision, yeah, because we're
Yeah.
going to close. Okay. So, noting that there is not a single person in the room who could be a speaker, for a motion to close.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye?
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This concludes the public hearing for March 24, 2015.
Happy Passover.
No, we're still on the camera.
Oh, yeah.